Welcome to Hustle and Flow with Heather Hubbard, episode number 27. Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard, and I was a litigator, partner, and practice group leader at an AmLaw 200 firm. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your personal life. So how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you embrace your ambition without selling your soul? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Hello and welcome back. I am your host, Heather Hubbard, and today we are talking about non-billables. We are talking about those things that take up so much time, but we don't get credit for them often, and we don't get paid for them. So how do you manage them? That is what we are going to talk about today. Before we get to that, I do have two quick announcements. The first one is, as of the time of this recording, I only have 2 spots left to the Life and Law in Balance retreat at Miraval, September 24th through the 27th. So if you have been on the fence about that and kind of thinking, oh, I'd really like to go, but I'm going to wait and see, now is the time. We might be sold out at this point or down to 1. I don't know, but I am recording this today and there are 2 left. So lifeandlawinbalance.com if you think you would like to come to that retreat. And it has up to 12 hours of credit for CLE. Okay, so related to that, and this is the second announcement, we are also doing a scholarship. And I'm so excited. This is the first time we've offered this. It is a scholarship to a deserving female attorney that may not otherwise be able to afford to go to the retreat. So the fall retreat is for, you've got to be a female attorney, and you need to be either a solo where you own your own firm, or you need to be at a larger firm where you are of counsel, partner, senior associate, where you are actively building a book of business. And the reason why is because we're spending an entire day on business development concepts and strategy. And it's important with such a small group to really keep the conversation and the discussion focused on those high-level firm management, business development issues. But there are some eligibility requirements, but if you qualify, please take advantage of this opportunity. Sign up. You can apply for the scholarship. We are going to announce the winner on Friday, August 11th. So you have to get your applications in by Thursday, August 10th. So this episode's going to come out on the 8th. So if you hear this in time, you've got 2 days. So go check that out. We'll put that in the show notes. So you can head over to hustleandflowpodcast.com/27 with a link to fill out that application. And if you know someone that you think would be a great fit, give them a heads up, let them know it's coming. So that said, let's jump into non-billables. We tend to give them so much time and energy without even thinking about it. When it comes to our billables, we're always looking for ways to manage that, to leverage that. And yet when it comes to non-billables, we don't really have a plan. Most people don't. And they just allow whatever comes in, whatever shows up on their door, they just say yes. And so a lot of attorneys let the non-billable aspect of law completely get out of control, and they don't know how to manage it because there's no plan in place to begin with. So that's the concept that I want to talk about today, is how do you identify your categories of non-billables and how do you plan for them on the front end so that you are properly managing them and making sure that you're not doing so many that you start to get resentful, that you're, doing more than your fair share and you're not getting paid and you're not getting credit. And then you're like, what's up? So I'm going to give you some tools today that's going to empower you to be in charge on the front end so that you're not really annoyed and frustrated and resentful on the back end, which might be where you are right now. So I'm just going to help you unwind that and come up with a plan to move forward. Okay, so in my mind, and you can probably break this down into a million different categories, but in my mind, there are 4 main categories for non-billables that you want to plan for in advance. The first one is business development. If you are at a law firm and you're not a junior associate, you have to have business development in your non-billable plan. Now, if you are, let's say, a junior associate, or let's say that you are in-house or in some other kind of organization that is not a law firm, you might just scratch through that, draw a line through that, and instead of business development, for you, you would probably just put professional development, career development. Now, that doesn't mean that law firm attorneys aren't doing that as well, but they're generally going hand in hand. So that's why I would say business development for law firms and professional development, career development for those of you not trying to build a book of business. That's category number one. And for those of you that are maybe on the treadmill right now or in your car, don't worry about taking notes. For this one, I actually have a PDF that summarizes everything for you, and you can get a copy of that at hustleandflowpodcast.com/27. So just remember 27 and you can grab this after the show. All right, so that's the first category. The second category is pro bono. Now, maybe you don't do a lot of pro bono work. My personal opinion is that as a lawyer, it is our duty and obligation to be providing pro bono services. Now, you may disagree. I know our Tennessee Supreme Court, they recently amended the rules to say that there's an expectation, and there's discussion on whether you should have to report. I think, different states are dealing with this differently. But if you also believe that ethically you should be providing some pro bono services, and I hope you do, then this should be a category in and of itself. And it can be a small amount, but it needs its own plan. Word of caution, pro bono does not mean being on a board, a community board, because you're probably not really providing legal services to them. If you are, right? If that's the sole reason you're on the board and you're doing it on a regular basis, it's not just they might ask me a legal question here and there. That is not pro bono when I'm doing these categories, because to me, pro bono is truly helping someone in need and that does not have the means available. A lot of times nonprofit boards do have the means available, even though they're helping underprivileged people or others in need. So just throwing that out there. Number 3, and this is where we're now going to get to your board of directors. Number 3 is community, because community is important. And again, maybe you don't give back to the community. My guess is that you do. This is where the time is going to go there. Now, I'm always saying that it's really hard to compartmentalize your professional life and your personal life. So if being involved in your community, in your personal life, tends to take up a lot of your time as well, you really should just go ahead and come up with a joint plan that covers what you're doing in the community, both as a lawyer and just as, a parent or a good citizen. And then the last category, number 4, this is really admin type stuff. So this is your firm stuff. If you're a solo, this might take up a lot of time. This could be everything from accounting to training to dealing with hiring decisions, paying the bills, getting new light bulbs, right? It depends on how solo you are, how much help you have. At really large law firms, this could involve being on committees. It could involve mentoring. It could involve being on management, right? Like being in a leadership role where you are, maybe you're on the board, or maybe you're a practice group leader. Maybe you are the chair of a section or an industry group, attending meetings. Even if you're not doing any of those things, you still have to attend law firm meetings. And the same is true if you're in a company, right? So if you're in a company, you're just going to write right through that. It's not firm, it'll be company, organization. There are always admin type things that you're doing. So I get that for the most part, if you are in a company, you're not actually billing, but hopefully you do see the difference between doing productive work, substantive work, and all of the admin stuff that, it really just piles on. And it makes you feel overwhelmed because you can't get everything done, and it keeps you in the office late at night or going back to your laptop or your phone once you are home. So this is just as relevant to you. All right. So those are our 4 categories: business development / professional development, pro bono, community. And by the way, I should have mentioned community also includes like bar associations and other legal organizations. And then 4, admin for your firm or your company. Okay, so now that we have those 4 buckets, what do we do with it? right? When you think of it that way, you're like, I probably do way too much. Okay, so here's how you're going to start deciding whether or not you should be doing it or not. And what I would love for you to do, if you have time and you are like, oh gosh, I really should get on top of this, it would be great for you to kind of go ahead and just jot down all of the non-billable things that you've got going on so that you can use the process I'm about to share to analyze whether or not you should keep doing it or you should stop doing it. And you might have areas where you need to start doing it. And if you're so overwhelmed that you don't want to even do an inventory of what you've already got going on, you just want to plan for moving forward, then you can think about this from the perspective of every time something new comes in, how would you analyze it? Although I would love to see you planning on the front end. Okay, so you probably already know by now if you've been listening to my podcast for a while or just on my newsletter list for the last few years, you know that setting goals and following a plan, to me, like that is end all be all. If you actually want to control your life and accomplish your goals, you have to have a plan and you have to follow it. So the first question when you're setting up the planning piece for these 4 categories is you look at something, again, it can be something you're already doing or something that's coming to you as an opportunity. And the first question you want to ask is, what goal does this advance? So, for example, when you're looking at a business development opportunity, right? Let's say it's a networking reception or another opportunity to be on an industry team, something else, right? Like it's a new opportunity that's coming in, and it could be something as small as a networking reception or something as big as being on a client team or an industry team. Our tendency is to say, oh yes, that sounds like a great opportunity. But that's where we get overextended. We need to say and ask ourselves, okay, well, if I do this, what goal does this advance? And if you don't have anywhere in your plan that you are targeting the type of people that's going to be at this networking event, and it's not built into your system how you would even follow up, and if this, like, say, new client team or industry team has nothing to do with what's in your plan, then the answer is going to be, no, this is not a good opportunity. And if it is perfectly aligned, then you can know with confidence, yes, I should be doing this. And if you've never flexed your muscles like this before, if you've never really considered, should I be doing this? And you just say yes, because you're worried you're going to miss out on a great opportunity, right? So many of us experience FOMO. We think, if I don't do this, what if I miss out? But the problem is we get overextended, we're not focused, and then we don't reach any of our goals. So, and by the way, if you have a plan and you're working your plan, then you're going to be seeing payoffs. So you're not going to be as likely to be pulled into another direction where it's like bright, shiny object. Okay. So what goal does this advance? And this isn't just for business development. This also can fall into the other categories. So with pro bono, in my opinion, is the easiest one. But when you're deciding what kind of pro bono you want to do on the front end, you know, there's a difference between going and spending a few hours at a clinic and just providing your services during that set time frame. That's a lot different than, you know, taking on a pro bono death penalty case that could last years, right? A lot of the really large firms will have a pro bono department and a coordinator and attorneys that just work full-time pro bono because they take on such large matters. So you really have to think on the front end about what you're getting yourself into, but the question is still relevant. What goal does this advance? And your goal for pro bono may be different than someone else's. So when you're setting up your plan, your goal may just be to do so many hours of pro bono a year, right? And so if an opportunity comes up and it doesn't conflict with anything else, then that's aligned with the goal. You might have, though, let's say you're a junior associate and you're wanting more courtroom experience. You can use those pro bono opportunities to get into the courtroom. And if a pro bono opportunity comes in, let's say it's a debt clinic or a wills clinic, that's not actually advancing your goal, right? So if you had said that part of your pro bono is to get courtroom experience, when an opportunity comes in, when a pro bono matter comes in, no matter how much you want to help somebody, if it's not aligned, you should say no, because there are so many other opportunities where courtroom experience would be offered and required. So it's not like you're saying no to everyone. There are options out there for you that are aligned with your goal. So stay focused. Same with the community. So when you're looking at getting on a board of directors, or you're going to get involved in a bar association or other legal association, let me tell you, those things take a ton of time. And I think, we all know it's important to be involved in the community. We all want to give back, both to the bar and to important nonprofits, maybe your children's school. But they're a major time suck. And if you're doing this work, you know what I'm talking about. So the question's still relevant. What goal does this advance? And, maybe it's related. Sometimes people make a business development goal out of being on nonprofit boards. I would rather you do it just out of the goodness of your heart, but whatever. But you need to go ahead and have on the front end what your goal is for the community and what your goal is for the legal community as well. So that when opportunities come in, you can ask yourself, is this aligned? Does it advance this goal? And maybe yours is having a bar leadership position. Well, if that's the case, then you want to pick one organization and get super involved in it. You don't need to be in 5 different ones on 5 different committees. You got to get focused so that you can reduce your time, but still be effective in the role you're in, right? You want to be effective for that organization. And you also want to advance whatever your goal is. And then last is your firm and your company. You will be asked to do a ton of things that may not be that important. And you don't have to worry about, does the firm think this is important? You have to check in with yourself. And we're going to get to that in a minute. But what goal does this advance? If being on the summer recruiting committee or the summer associate, just mentoring, if that does not advance a goal, then you politely decline. And for those of you that are used to saying yes to everything and you're like, but I want to be a team player, this kind of goes back to last week with our listener question. You got to take care of yourself first. And if that is not aligned with one of your goals, then I want to encourage you to start flexing your muscles and saying no to opportunities that do not advance your goals. All right, we'll get to that in a minute. All right, so the next question when you're looking at this is, how much time do I have to give? Most of us don't actually think about that. Like, we know we're busy, we know we're overwhelmed, but we just commit to these things without knowing how much time it's actually going to take and how much time we actually have to give. One of my pet peeves is when people sign up to be on committees and boards and then never show up because they're so busy. Like, just don't even sign up in the first place. How much time do I have to give? I would love to see you looking at this at the beginning of the year and just plotting it out, saying, this is how much time I have to give. This is how much time I'm going to do pro bono. This is how much time I'm going to do biz dev. This is how much time I'm going to do community. And this is how much time I'm going to do firm company. And you track it the same way as billables, and you are serious about it. And it gives you a chance to be even more serious about what you say yes and no to, because if you are already setting on the front end a finite amount of time, then it changes the ballgame. And I would love to see you do that. But let's say you've not done that and we are where we are. When something comes in, you want to say, okay, well, how much time do I have to give? Truthfully. And if it's not that much, then you should decline the opportunity. If you are overwhelmed, you've got a ton of work to do, and maybe a networking opportunity does come in, if you don't have the time, even if it's aligned with your goal, the answer still might be no. And giving yourself permission to say no to things is really important. Same with your firm and your company. If you're asked to do something that you don't have time to do, don't stretch yourself so thin that you then do a bad job on it. Or 2, you end up spending so much time on it that your billable hours start to decline, because guess what? Your firm is not going to be happy with that. So these are important questions. What goal does this advance, and how much time do I have to give? All right, here's the third question that I want you to ask. And this might sound selfish, but again, back to our Q&A from last week on episode 26. I don't believe it's selfish. I believe it's actually giving and caring to take care of yourself first and think about these things. But what's the reward? What's the payoff? And that might sound really bad to say, well, am I going to get paid for this, or what's the payoff? But it's important, because if you just say yes to everything and you're the person that's always doing the work and you don't really get any credit or payment for it, you're going to get really resentful, right? You're going to get really resentful because no one else is carrying their weight. And here you are doing all of this non-billable work. No one's appreciating it. They're basically forcing you to do it in your mind. You're like, I can't say no. And yet they're not appreciating it. They're not paying me for it. And it just makes you mad and angry and frustrated. This question can help avoid all of that. What's the reward or the payoff? Now, business development, that's pretty easy. The reward or payoff is, if it works, you're presumably getting money in the door. But let's say you're in-house and you're looking at something that's professional development. Does taking a certain course or going to certain trainings or being involved in a certain group, does that truly advance your career? And if the answer is no, there's probably not going to be a real good ROI, then maybe that's not the best use of your time. The ones that get a little bit trickier are the other categories. So what's the reward payoff? Well, for pro bono, right? The reward and the payoff just could be that it makes you feel good in your heart. That's okay. That is a reward. That's an intrinsic reward. You just need to be clear on what those are on the front end, right? But that's okay. That can be the reward, is that you're helping someone else. You're doing something good. And so that can be legitimate. Community. What's the reward? Again, it could be because you deeply care about the mission of the nonprofit. It could be that you deeply care about the bar association. But unless you have a true altruistic, feeling towards what you're doing, if you also are wanting to be seen in the public eye as a leader, or if you're wanting to be able to put it on your resume, or if you're maybe wanting to try to get contacts or networking out of it, or maybe you're wanting to be able to use it as a springboard to something else, then just be honest about that and go ahead and say what it is you're trying to do. That will help you clarify the reward and payoff piece. So for example, if a nonprofit board comes open and they ask you to be on it, and you've already looked at, what goal does this advance and how much time do I have to give? When you then look at the reward payoff, if it's going to get you contacts with maybe 3 or 4 people that have been on your list, then that might help you say yes to that. If, on the other hand, there are no contacts and it's going to take a ton of time and it doesn't really help you springboard, it doesn't help you get new clients, it doesn't help you with your reputation in the community, then maybe the answer is no. And again, you don't have to tell people that you're thinking these things, but it's important that you go through this process in your own mind or on a piece of paper. And then, for the firm and the company, this is a big one. What's the reward payoff? A lot of us think that it's important to have a leadership role, to have some kind of involvement in the firm. And I would agree. I think it looks good. But let's be honest. Unless you genuinely are just a leader and that's part of what you want your career to look like, being super involved in a law firm is generally not rewarded. So if you're on a ton of committees, if you're leading up a ton of different things, going to all these meetings, your firm is probably not going to pay you for that, right? When you get to comp time, they may say they take everything into consideration, but let's be honest. They care about how much money you're bringing in. And so unless your firm truly has a carve out and is telling you that they are paying you a certain amount for the admin that you're doing, you need to be really careful not to overextend yourself, because others are not going to be doing this work and they're going to be making just as much or more money as you. And you're only hurting yourself. Right? Like, I get that you're trying to be nice. I get that you're trying to be helpful. You want to be seen as a team player. But at the end of the day, if you're not getting paid for it and it's not something that you just genuinely want to do, it's not a good idea. And maybe it is something that you genuinely want to do, but I want you to then compare that to other stuff you genuinely want to do, right? This goes back to episode number 8, why saying yes means saying no. There is always a trade-off. So when you think of it in those terms, do you have other stuff you genuinely might want to do even more? If so, we need to have an intervention. You've got to stop doing all the non-billable work. It is not helping you in your career, even though people might appreciate it and tell you that they like all of your involvement. They like you doing the work. That's the thing. But they're not going to actually compensate you or credit you for it going forward. So this is why so many people get up for partner, don't make it, and they're like, I did all of this firm stuff. they don't actually care about that when it comes to, did it impact your billables? If you weren't getting all of your work done, if your numbers weren't as high as your colleagues that weren't doing that work, I mean, that's what matters. And we just have to be honest about it so that we're not disillusioned and resentful and really angry. Okay. And even if you have your own firm, sometimes you need to be hiring out those non-billables because it's not a good use of your time. Okay. So you have a plan. You've got your buckets. You know how much time you're going to devote to each throughout the year. And you are allocating that time wisely because you only have so much of it. You're asking yourself these questions to decide whether or not you want to do it or not. And you have now decided that it's time to say no. How do you do that? Okay. So one is you just have to start practicing it. You just have to practice saying no. And it's going to be hard. And if you've always said yes, people are not going to like your no and they're going to push back. Okay. So you just have to start practicing. If it does not fit within your plan and you really want to say yes, and when you say no, they push back and then you feel really bad, you just have to go back to that place of knowing that you don't have the time. You have to put on your oxygen mask first. And if you do this, you're going to end up being resentful or not doing a good job. So you're actually doing them a disservice, even if in the moment it feels like you were being selfish. Okay? So you just got to practice saying no. The second piece, this means even if you've said yes, you need to be clear on expectations and boundaries and refer back to that often. And that is both for you and the other person. So when you are accepting a new position on a board or you're agreeing to be on a committee, you want to have a conversation on the front end of how much time is expected of me? How much time is this going to take? And people are probably not going to have a good answer, and you got to push for it. And if they don't provide the answer, then it's important for you to provide it. So you can say, well, here's how much I have a week, or here's how much I have a month that I can devote to this. And it will not be an hour more. So if an hour more is asked of me, I'll then have to decline. So if it's important for you to have someone that can provide more time than that, we should look at someone else doing it now. And it's even worth documenting that in an email, not for, you're not trying to prove your case, but one, you need to remember. And two, it's helpful to then have that when someone's asking you to go above and beyond, to reach back out and say, you can forward the email and say, hey, I know you really need this work, but I don't have the time to devote. As discussed, I only have 10 hours on this project and, I can't go beyond that. So be clear on the front end as to how much time you can bring to the table. And everyone needs to know that. Okay? Have a direct conversation. I would love for you to have a direct conversation, to say what you mean and mean what you say, but I get that it's hard. Again, this is like saying no. The more you practice it, the easier it gets. Quick example. And by the way, I should have probably mentioned this at the beginning. I think that non-billables often get stuck on women's plates. That's where it gets put because, one, we are good doers and we are caretakers and we don't say no. And we just we're organized. And so we get a ton of admin and we don't get paid for it. And this is part of the pay gap. And so we have to stop doing it. We have to start saying no. So I was in a management meeting when the firm said, let's send, this group of women to go to this women's conference, which is great, right? I mean, the intention is so wonderful that we're wanting to support women going on this conference to just build up their confidence and talk about women's issues in the law. Great. So then budgeting comes up. How are we paying for this? And someone said, well, we've got CLE budget. So each person, they'll just have to use their CLE credit to go to that. And so, I raised my hand and was like, whoa, wait, guys, I think we're having an unintended consequence here. Because if women are basically being told that they have to take their CLE credit that they could have been using to get substantive experience to go get this women's conference, you're actually putting them in a worse position than their male colleagues that are actually getting the substantive experience. And they were like, oh, I'd never thought of it like that. And so we got different money. It was from a good place. They had no idea that they were actually creating this unintended consequence. And this is what I mean by this direct conversation. By the way, if you are an attorney of color, you're probably on every board coming and going and on every firm committee, right? Because they want to have diversity on committees. But if you're like in a law firm of 100 and you're the only, woman of color, you can't be on every board. I mean, that doesn't actually help your career. So their intention might be good, that they want diversity, but the unintended consequence is that you're doing non-billable work all the time. You're not doing billables. And then when they compare you to your colleagues, they're like, well, you didn't work as much. You have to be responsible for that. And so that means having direct conversations. It means saying, I appreciate that you want to include me, and I know that diversity is important to you, but I would like to talk about the unintended consequence that this is going to have on my career and is actually going to impact my trajectory. So unless there's going to be an exception made, unless there's going to be a carve out, unless we are going to agree in writing in a contract that I'm going to be paid for this and my work is going to be considered the same as billable work when it comes to partnership consideration or compensation or promotion, then I have to protect my career and I have to decline, right? You cannot be carrying the burden for everyone and then also be penalized for it in your career. So having direct conversations, that's really important. And like I said, I think that is more of an issue for attorneys of color or other really underrepresented attorneys. It might be LGBT or other issues. So sometimes, being a woman in and of itself is not that big of an issue, but the higher you get in organizations, right, there are fewer women. And so if even as a young associate, you are being tasked as a female to be on all kinds of things, and they say they're trying to give you opportunities, you have to say, no, I have to focus on my career and I want to be successful and I want to become a partner and I want to become an equity partner. And part of that means I have to focus on the substance and the billable. Okay. And you can say that in a very nice way. And my guess is it will be similar to the conversation I just shared. They had never thought of it that way. And when you explain it, they'll be like, oh, that makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, well, that's their problem. You still got to take care of yourself. All right. This one has gotten longer than I thought it would, but that is a plan for you on your non-billables. You have got this. Cut out as much as you can. Make sure that what you are doing is focused and aligned and giving you the payoff that you need. And you are focused with just the time that you are allotting and setting aside for it. And it will make you happier. It will make you more productive, and you are helping others, and you're going to give others a chance to step up to the plate and do their fair share as well. Whew. All right. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I will be back next week with the path to partnership. So if you know any associates out there, or if you're an associate yourself, you're going to want to listen in next week. Talk to you later. Bye. Are you feeling stuck or frustrated in your career? Are you exhausted from trying to balance so many competing demands? Do you have big dreams and goals, but no time to focus on them? Then join me in a small group of female attorneys for the Life and Law in Balance retreats at Miraval. They're coming up in September. To learn more and register, go to lifeandlawinbalance.com. I'd love to meet you there.